Okay, it looks like people have started coming in. I want to welcome everybody to our 2022 Gardening Green Expo. The Expo is sponsored by North and South Rivers Watershed Association, the Water Smart Program, and Kennedy's Country Gardens. And I want to do a little housekeeping before we start. If you hover your mouse down along the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see a thing that says chat. And if you click on that, it'll pop up to the side of your screen. And in the chat, I've loaded some links that you might like. There's a link to register for prizes. There's a link to get our special membership for new members. There's the event link where you can read more about the upcoming things. And then, excuse me, there's a couple resources on kid-friendly gardening. Also, if you have a question, you can just type it in the chat. And then when we get done with the session, I'll read the questions to Susan. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Susan Leigh Anthony of Doveflower Cottage Gardens.
Hello there. Good evening. I am happy to be here to talk about kid-friendly gardening. It was a lot of fun to work on this. The first thing I want to do is read you a little short story that I wrote several years ago. I guess it's about 14 years ago now. My grandniece Ella, who lives up in southern New Hampshire, I'm very close with her. And so let me read this. She was 3 at the time. It's called Teaching Ella. Though not blessed by children of my own, I thoroughly enjoy working with them. My grandniece Ella, who lives in southern New Hampshire, is very special to me, and I hope she will remember me someday as the auntie who taught her about flowers, or flowies, as she used to call them. At just barely 3 years old, this child knows and can identify white birch, because of the white bark, foxglove, which is a fairy plant, lamb's ear, soft gray leaves, hollyhock, very tall, butterfly bush, fragrant and attracts the butterflies, black-eyed Susan, bright color, funny name, petunia, pretty color, they are screaming magenta and they smell good, morning glory, climbing vine and gorgeous huge blue flowers. Sometimes we pick a blossom and bring it into a vase so she can marvel at it while she eats breakfast. All of these plants grow in her yard and we make connections so she can understand to help her learn about them. She is very clear because we repeat it so often that she is never, ever to pick flowers or eat them without a grown up with her, like Mom or Gigi, who's her grandmother, my sister, or Auntie Susan. We walk together up the hill in the back where an old tree, half uprooted, features a cavernous and gnarly entrance. Here is where the fairies live, and we often visit to check on them and leave food at their door. We both swear we've seen them flit by. They are really fast and can make themselves invisible too. So, well, in early autumn, we find many oak trees have dropped their little acorn offerings. We understand that the tops are hats, berets actually, for the fairies to wear so their tiny heads stay warm in winter. I often gather a miniature bouquet from my own yard before heading up on Monday morning, and she looks forward to these. They are just for her. This is from Auntie Susan. So let me start the slideshow. Uh-oh, Lori, what happened? Oh dear. It's not working for some reason.
You should be able to hit your enter key if your arrows aren't working.
Okay. Yeah, nothing's happening. It worked fine before we did this. What happened?
I'm not sure.
I'm so sorry, folks. We tried this and it worked just fine. Oh, here we go.
There we go.
I have no delay or something.
All right, you got it.
So this is about kid-friendly gardening, kids gardening. And I'm sure I probably won't say a lot here that you haven't already thought of, but just to emphasize that they are the future caretakers of this earth. What we teach them now is going to be their, basis for going forward and appreciating this earth and nature. So respect for nature comes through being in it. I mean, you can't love it if you don't know it. So you have to be out there in it. And it's our responsibility to help children appreciate it. And so what I'm going to do here is try to answer, how do kids connect to being in nature and with gardening, and how important it is for kids to know where their food comes from and to be involved in growing it. I've found that even from, going back to my own childhood, but also with working with kids, because I have done that a lot besides just having all these grandnieces and grandnephews. Mystery and magic are strong components for kids to learn about nature, and that they connect through the senses and through fun. Gardening is a great activity which not only helps children learn about plants and environmental science, but I think this is incredibly important. It helps them nurture skills like patience, responsibility, caring, and affection for nature. There's a little girl with her rosemary plant, so we're going to get into a lot of fragrance and herbs here too. She's probably getting ready to plant that in the ground. One of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about is with anything, you're always wanting kids to be safe, and as wonderful as gardening is, there are things out there that you have to be careful about, and it's a priority. You need to talk to them about it, not to scare them, but just to be aware. There are some plants that are toxic, and so you need to know what ones those are. Not using pesticides or herbicides under any circumstances, and certainly not around children or on anything that they're going to ingest. But I have never used any of those things, and I think the group we have here is probably very aware and doesn't do that. Anyway, tools can be very sharp. You have to be very careful about what you let them use depending on their age and ability. I was saying to Lori earlier today, I've come close to really hurting myself just with clippers. Get going out there, and next thing you know, I've got, oops, end of my finger. So you want to be really careful about that. Insect bites. If your kid is allergic to bees or anything, you want to make sure they've got an EpiPen. Any kind of allergies they might have, making sure they're not going to get a sunburn. Thorny plants, shoes that aren't going to have something go up through it. And of course, staying hydrated, making sure they have enough water. So those are just the things that I thought of, and you need to be aware of. Here's one poison plant. I hope I'm on the right slide here. Okay, yeah. Actually, two poison plants, but 3 slides of one, which is poison ivy. The upper left side are the berries that when the plant gets really big and grows up a tree, like you may not realize that those vines going up the trees on the side of the road are poison ivy, and they can get hefty. The vines can get very hefty. As the plant gets older, it will do that, become really, a thick stemmed, woody vine. And these berries are kind of beige. Kind of a funny short story was years ago, I lived in Plimpton. It was late autumn. There were no flowers. I had people coming for dinner. And so I walked around trying to find things to stick in a vase. Came upon these pretty beige berries, little clusters, and I got those along with many other things. And I'm very proud of myself. My friends came over. The guy happened to be a landscaper. This was 35 years ago, mind you. And he said, "My God, you got poison ivy." And I did not know at that time that that was what it could look like eventually. So be aware that it does look like that when it gets big. The one on the right is sort of our typical 3 leaves, a little bit shiny. And then the bottom one is the poison ivy in the fall. And the one I couldn't find a good picture of was early in the spring when it's very shiny and sort of reddish tinged, the leaves. And you've got to be very careful. You can like not see it. It can be under other things. So be very careful. Another one that's good to know about, and a lot of people don't know about it, but it's around, is stinging nettle. If you've ever come across it and inadvertently not knowing what it was, put your hand on it, that might induce you to learn what it looks like, because it feels like you've stuck your hand in a fire or something. It's it hurts, and it lasts for a while. So get to know what that one looks like. It is actually considered a useful plant, but you know, that's beside the point. I guess you just got to be careful about that. It's so important to get to kids through their senses. I mean, really, all of us, you know, take the world in through our senses, and kids are, you know, very much into sight, you know, having them stimulated, having their senses stimulated. The first thing, of course, is sight. So colorful plants, bright, fun colors, and you can, you know, evoke a mood with color, which I've talked about in other presentations when I'm talking about color in the garden. You know, soft, sweet colors, and soothing shades. It depends on the mood you want to create. Scent, of course, is a big one. It's certainly a big one for me. And I'm sure most of you know that it is so tied to our memory. And it's just, you know, to our taste. It's very, very important. Certainly many familiar herbs are fragrant. You know, we'll get to some slides of those in a bit. But so are the blossoms of several other garden plants, both annual and perennial. And there are lists that on the handouts, I just couldn't have pictures of every single thing I thought of. But think of things like lilacs, and the Mayflower viburnum. And then one of our native plant trees, the sassafras, if you scratch at the bark or you tear the leaf, you will get that very, I don't know, spicy, almost very refreshing scent. Sassafras was used as a tea at one time too, but you've got to be careful with that. Don't be giving your kids sassafras tea. Bee balm or monarda happens to be a wonderful scented perennial. Smells a little bit like well, Earl Grey tea. And there are many different colors and sizes of it. There are some wonderful native versions of that plant as well. And then it's a plant called chocolate cosmos. It's an annual. It's comes from a little bulb, actually, unlike most of the other cosmos plants. And it is kind of a funny color, sort of brownish burgundy, chocolatey, I guess. But if you put your nose very close to it, especially when it's warm, because plants, you get the scent from plants better when it's warm because it releases the essential oils. But if you smell it, it definitely has chocolatey scent, and kids would love that. Touch, things like lamb's ear. I think probably some of you are familiar with that. And I'm going to show some slides with that. Scratchy could be the rough outer skin of the cantaloupe if you're growing melons of any kind. So there's lots of things for the senses. Sound could be the rattle of tall grasses in the wind, and certainly all the things around us, like the bees and the bird songs. Taste, there's plenty of things they can taste out there, but 3 that came to my mind that I thought would appeal to kids and are easy to pick while you're out there. They don't need any cooking. Are strawberries, cherry tomatoes, and spearmint. Kids make connections to nature this way. So here's a few pretty pictures coming up here. Here's scent, and on the left is Heliotropum arborescens. It's an annual. It's one of my favorite annuals. It does come in a lighter purple and white, but I like the deeper purple. I have a topiary of it that I've had for many years that I have someone winter over for me. And the scent is so soft and sweet. Some people say vanilla. I say baby powder. That's what it smells like to me. So the middle one, of course, is rose, and this is I'm sorry, I don't have the name of this particular variety, but usually the big old-fashioned ones, especially those David Austin roses, English roses, are almost always highly scented and just delicious. You can eat rose petals as long as they're not sprayed, and as long as you don't eat the stamens and just the rose part. So I've flavored many things with roses. I've been in the Herb Society for 25 plus years, and we do all kinds of crazy things like that. And of course, on the right, I'm sure this is familiar to you. This is lavender, probably one of the most beloved herbs, and that refreshing, soothing scent. It's a wonderful, wonderful plant. Sound and touch. I combine these two. Sound, again, can be from a plant itself. Baptisia australis, or I just call it Baptisia. It's one that we grow around here. When it's finished flowering, the pods dry and they're like blue-black, and you can hear the seeds inside. They make great little musical instrument for a kid. So that's on the top left. The one on the top right, that's a type of lavender, and it's not the perennial kind we grow here. It's kind of French lavender. I think it's the Stokes lavender. And I have a lot of plants that attract hummingbirds in my yard because I love hummingbirds. They represent joy, and they're just so darn cute. They make little chirpy noises if you're up close to them, and mine are almost tame. They come here the same. I think they're the same ones. I've heard the same ones come back, and they flit around, and then they'll come right up to me, practically in my face, and chitter chatter. And you can hear their wings sometimes too. They're just fabulous. Down the bottom left is a Celosia plumosa. Just the name sounds very interesting, flamboyant. It's a flamboyant plant. And this one is bright screaming orange, and it is very soft and feathery. And it's just the kind of plant a kid would love because it's gaudy as hell. The Echinops, or the globe thistle on the bottom right, it's very prickly. This is a plant that I grew up, my mother grew this plant. It's been around for ages. It's a nice July bloomer, and it is very, very prickly. Also great for drying, but you got to make sure you cut them at the right time, and then they keep their color. When I first decided to do this, I immediately called my niece Alexa Houghton here in Scituate, and she's works with kids, has kids, totally into kids. And I said, what do you think? She said, oh, rainbow garden. I'm like, okay. And it was very hard to find any photos of one. And I've never made one, but it looks really fun. And I did get permission to use this one from the person that whose photo it is. And there's a mix here. Most everything from the chard, the Swiss chard forward is edible. There, I believe on the very edges, the edging plant is the that little basil that's like a boxwood basil. And then there's different lettuces and um, I think that zinnias, red zinnias, those are not edible, but there's marigolds and just various other plants, cabbage, and of course the chard. So you can do anything you want, but I think the idea is to make the bands. And if you can follow the actual grade of colors in the rainbow, that would be kind of fun. So moving on. And I am just amazed when I go through catalogs at all the interesting colors that are offered for vegetables. It's just wild. It's wild. And I think to myself, you know, sometimes it's hard to get kids to eat vegetables. I remember I have a niece that she just looked at us, she said, I don't eat anything green, period. She was, you know, little, and it took her years to get past that. But she probably wouldn't eat any of this either. So, but nowadays, you know, you can get all these incredible colors. You know, very tempting, very beautiful. The carrots are rainbow, the Swiss chard rainbow. The radishes don't come in every color, but they come in those pink, red, purple, white shades. And if you're looking for something that will make a kid feel confident about growing something, pick radishes. They are so easy. They just come up. They like no fail. They're fabulous. And of course, that broccoli is just outrageously beautiful purple. And when I was a kid, I would have had everything be purple. So yeah, hopefully get them to eat them, you know, and make them proud that they had grown them themselves. This was tough to get a decent sized picture. I had to enlarge and it got a little bit distorted. But growing squash, great, especially end of the season harvest. And this was over a long arbor, actually a pergola. And it's not a fancy one. It's not wooden. It's basically, you know, large gauge chicken wire over, you know, some poles. And they've grown a variety. I mean, you have to have them, you know, somewhere to go. And they're much better up off the ground anyway, so they won't rot. So I just thought this was fun. And it gives a sense of enclosure. It's fun. Kids like secret places. So it's doable. When I think of kids, sometimes I just think of, you know, like things that are my size, you know, little things, mini things. And these two particular plants here are just perfect for that. And they're not hard to grow. The top one is not a plain strawberry, not the typical kind that are, you know, rather large. These are about a ½ an inch big. They're alpine strawberries. And having been in the herb society for a long time, this is a very often used for like edging in an herb garden. The fun thing about them is you can just pick while you're out there, pick and eat. You'll never, unless you've got tons and tons of plants, you'll never get a huge harvest. That's not what they're about. They're pretty and they're tiny. So nice for little hands. And again, as long as you're not using any chemicals out there, you can just walk by and eat one. They're very sweet. The cherry tomatoes on the bottom is another nice size. My favorite variety happens to be sun gold. And I always have good luck with those. Very sweet, kind of yellowish orange. See the next slide. Here we're going to see some herbs, and there were so many herbs I couldn't decide which ones. I only had room for a few. But you know, when we think of herbs, we think of fragrance, we think of culinary. There are certainly many herbs. Just about everything, to be honest with you, is an herb, has been used for, is useful for something. But here we're talking about fragrance and maybe a little bit about taste. And the chamomile on the left makes a soothing tea. You can get that. You can try making your own. It's a very soft, sweet smell. The lemon verbena at the top right, this picture actually makes it look better than it really does because it's not an exciting looking plant, but it makes up for it with its scent and its flavor. It is by far probably everyone's favorite lemon herb. It is like lemon candy, absolutely like lemon candy. And I use it in a variety of ways. My husband makes lemon verbena ice cream a couple of times during the summer. It's fabulous. I make little tea breads and I use it to flavor that. Sometimes in a fruit salad. The spearmint on the bottom, that one's a perennial. There is a perennial chamomile and there's one that's not a perennial. Lemon verbena is not a perennial. Some people have luck overwintering it. I end up just buying a couple of new plants every year. And by the end of the summer, they're huge. They're almost like a shrub. It's a little bit woody. But back down to the spearmint, that's my favorite flavor mint. There are so many mints. If you ever go like to the Richter's catalog, which is a great place to get herbs, the variety is amazing. You'll see there's banana flavored, there's this flavor, there's everything. Of course, there's peppermint and chocolate mint and eau de cologne and so many. Anyway, I like spearmint. I find it the most useful because I use it in my iced tea. And I just like the flavor of spearmint. I'm not a big peppermint person. And you can use it to flavor ice creams too. There's lots of things you can do with it. Down on the bottom middle and on the right are the same two plants. One is the foliage, the other is the flower. I've used this a few times to edge beds and it stays quite low. It is an allium, it's an onion. And it's called curly onion or curly chives. And it's got a bluish tone to the foliage, which also makes it very pretty. And then the flowers come up quite late, like August. And it is edible. Pretty much all the alliums are edible. Some are better than others. This isn't one I particularly use to eat. I grow chives in my herb garden if I were gonna grow one to eat, or garlic. But anyway, it's very pretty. And I think that the twisty part of it is kind of fun. I thought I'd talk a little bit about vines. And again, I could not tell you or get pictures of every single one. But here's three that I find really fun. The top one is called Love in a Puff. The Latin name, as you can see on the screen, I will say it is Cardiospermum. It's supposed to be spermum, not sperm. Halicacabum. Now, if you don't think I get giggles every time I say that to the kids, well, I do. They don't even believe me, and I have to show them on the computer. So the name is hilarious enough, and I really don't know what it means. I know the cardiosperm, cardio means heart. And if you look at the seeds down on the bottom left, you will see the seeds are, this is blown up, but the seeds are about size of a peppercorn, maybe a little bit bigger. They're very hard, and each has a perfect little beige heart in the middle of it. And that's where the cardio part comes from. At the top, the picture of the top with the pods, those pods, they come from a little white flower that is nothing to look at. I like the pods, the green pods, but the thing is when those pods, excuse me, ripen completely, which is when they turn crispy brown, way at the end of the season. I kind of look, I go out and I look and, oh, there's a couple that are ready. There's a couple and I save them because inside there are always 3 of those seeds and you can save them and start them the following spring. I've done it. It's not hard. I'm not a fancy propagator by any means. It's whatever I can get to grow on my windowsill here. And you can grow them and then you can have them year after year and you can give them away. I've given them to quite a few people. At the top is Morning Glory. I love the way the blossoms twist and open. And that's Heavenly Blue there. That's kind of your classic, Morning Glory shade. But there are many other colors. I happen to like Grandpa Ott as well, which is a deep purple. And then the bottom one is Moonflower. It blooms late. You got to get it going early or buy plants. It is pure white and it blooms only at night, that's the exceptional part of it. So another fun thing to do with a kid would be to have a moon garden and have this in the moon garden. It does, all of these need to climb up something, but it's beautiful and it does the same thing. It twists open and each blossom only lasts for a day. So that's a fun one too. I thought it would be fun to do this because years ago I saw an article in the Boston Globe magazine. Oh my God, it must have been, it was a long time ago, decades ago. And the whole thing was on plants with animal names, and it was really a fun concept. So at the top, and the handouts have many more ideas on this, and you could research it yourself too. But bee balm, of course, is bee, right? This happens to be the Monarda fistulosa, which is one of our native bee balms. Lamb's ear, we're all familiar with that. And as I was saying to Lori earlier, so that's the hugest patch of lamb's ear I ever saw in my life. That lamb's ear is the old-fashioned kind, gets the flower stalk. There are more recent varieties, although they've been around for a while now, called Helene von Stein or big ears. And the leaves are bigger and they don't get the flower. A lot of people don't like the flower, and I happen to be one of them, not a big fan of the flower. But it's the soft leaves, it's that gray, beautiful soft gray in texture that is so appealing to me. Bottom, lion's tail, Leonidas, Leonuris, blooms very late. Good to have it in a protected place, although our seasons are extending, especially in the fall. Beautiful, gets quite tall, beautiful whorls of orange blossoms, very, very pretty color. And the skunk cabbage, thought I'd do a couple of native plants here because of who we are. And I think the flowers on the skunk cabbage are hilarious. They look like they might eat you. Of course, they do eat insects. I believe they eat flies. And it's Symplocarpus fetidus. Fetidus, whenever you see that with next to anything or a plant name, it means it doesn't smell very good. So that's where they get the skunk cabbage, because of the smell. So those are probably out now at this point. A few other fun plants I wanted to talk about, and there are so many out there, but sunflowers are something that everybody loves them. They're so happy. It almost looks like they're smiling at you. They turn with the sun, the heads turn, which is interesting. Then the seeds in the fall for the birds are a wonderful, wonderful addition. They grow very easily, and they really don't need a lot of care. Just water them when they need it. That's about it. And they need to be in the sun. On the right top, not the best picture, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, because it's one of my favorite plants in the whole world. I actually wore this flower in my hair at my wedding, two sides behind my ears. And it's kind of a signature plant for me. Love in a Mist. It's also called Nigella. This is Nigella damascena. There are other kinds of Nigella as well. And the flower, the mystical variety is my favorite because it's very blue. There are other colors ranging from white to mauve to deep purple. But I have a penchant for blue flowers, so if I can get the blue, that's what I have. And then it develops a seed pod. At the top of this photo, you can see one starting sort of roundish. And that pod, you'd be familiar with it probably, seen it in wreaths and dried arrangements. And there's a right time to pick it when the color in the pod is good, which is, it's got sort of some burgundy striping on it. If you let it go too far, it won't be pretty. But when you let it completely ripen, become, again, crispy, like the Love in a Puff seed pods, let it get really crispy, like paper, dried paper. Then inside are these little black seeds, the nigella seeds, and then you can replant those and have them from year to year. Very cool plant. Forget me not down on the right the right bottom. I know everybody knows what they are. I just think they're such a fun plant to have. They have a cute name. As a kid, it was one I was familiar with. And I think every kid should be. They're old fashioned. They're blue. I love blue plants. They are easy. Once you get them going, and you can direct sow them into your garden, as long as you don't cut off the seed pods and let them go to seed and then scatter that seed when it's ripe, you'll have them. And then on the bottom, sorry, I'm getting a little hoarse here. On the bottom left, kiss me over the gate, over the garden gate, is a plant I had heard of. And I used to get it mixed up with Love Lies Bleeding, which is the name of which is probably not something you want to run by kids. It's a little bit macabre. But Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate has a nice ring to it. And this one is related to smartweed, which we've all seen later in the season along the side of the road. It gets tall. This one's got a good shade of pink, much brighter shade of pink than the little weedy ones. And it is a polygonum, which it is related to smartweed and those kinds of other plants. But I love it. I love it. And I have it in my garden. It's pretty tall. Can weave through other plants. It's great, like around delphinium, that kind of thing. I'm very into fairy gardens. I mean, I don't really have one, but I think about them a lot. I think about the fairies. Whoops, sorry. I think kids love them. The thought of them excites me. I love the Mary Barker. Oh gosh, what's her name? She does the flower fairies. Cecily Mary Barker, and it's just fairies that are from a certain plant, like the rose fairy or the holly fairy or the primula fairy, or and they're really cool. So this is, I believe this is from Bedrock Gardens up in Leigh, New Hampshire. You can make something like this pretty easily. It's metal frame, piping with grapevine over it. And then you see that kind of gnarly looking tree behind it. I always see faces in trees. Do you see the face? Anyway, this is kind of an invitation to go walk in there. And so what do you see? Maybe something like this. So the one on the left is a tree with moss with a fairy door. And I like this fairy door because most of the ones I've seen look kind of contrived. And I like this one. It's kind of plain and a little bit secretive or something. On the right, I found this picture and I had to show it. It was just total magic. And, I imagine these fairies living inside these trees, and it's their this little girl happens to be lucky enough to be out in the woods when they're there with her little corgi dog, I believe it is. It's all about magic, intrigue, fantasy, mystery. It's what fairies are about, in my opinion. This looks very much like the fairy house at my grandniece Ella's. It was a lot like this. I like this because it's got two entrances. It's got like a downstairs and an upstairs. And thing I don't like about this picture, though, I don't know if anybody else has noticed it, but there are, garlic mustard plants at the bottom. So I just want to go in and yank them right out. But anyway, this was a good picture otherwise. This is not in New Hampshire, but it's very similar. So, and you'll see these when you're walking in the woods. I wanted to read you a little something. I got this little catalog, this very shishi little catalog yesterday, and I looked at it because it was nice stuff that I couldn't afford. But I came across this little tiny sentence. It was a quote from a little girl named Greta, who was age 4. And she says, "I really love being human, but some days I really wish I could be a fairy." And I just thought that was very cute. So this picture of this little fairy who looks like she's just exhausted from casting good spells all day is from the Fairy House Festival up at Bedrock Gardens in New Hampshire. Not sure where that is with COVID at the moment, but you might want to check into that. I just cracked me up, the picture. On the right, of course, upper right, is a piece of artwork with fairies and the dandelions that we all used to blow and make wishes on. I don't particularly like them in my lawn. I don't think they look great in my lawn. I don't have a lot of lawn. So my husband likes to go out and remove them, but we do it manually. But if you're going to keep them, I mean, some people just go, "Hey, what the heck," right? The young leaves are tasty and nutritious. And as long as we don't use chemicals on our lawns, and I'm sure none of you do, you can go ahead and eat them. And if need be, if you want to dig them out, you do it by hand, and you could teach your kids to do it too. Hours of fun. And of course, everybody should be making wishes left and right on those things. You never know. Down on the bottom left is a beautifully done with things. All of the things used in this are things you could find. There's twigs and stumps and birch bark and moss and various other things. I think even on the top, that's a piece of it's like a window with like hornet's nest stuff. Very cool. So you can do that yourself and be creative, and you can go out and forage. Especially the fall is a great time, and pick up things for later use. I have a friend that does that, and he makes amazing things. On the right, when the weather's crummy or it's the middle of the winter and you're wanting to do something nature oriented instead of them being on their phone or computer or whatever, it's nice to make crafts, and it's nice to make them maybe for holiday gifts or whatever, for your own pleasure. And everything on these little acorn pine cone people are from nature. Acorns, pine cones, the maple seeds, samara, which are those little wing things, a couple of twigs, a stone, a little glue, and you got it. And there are instructions online for other things. And I thought somewhere, I thought I had a link. I know that you can go online and find other ideas. The spruce, which is a very good resource, I find pretty dependable online for anything to do with gardening. They have a link for things to do inside with kids. Places to visit. On the top left is a place called Green Animals. Took me years to finally get there, and I went just a few years ago, finally, and I was bowled over. It's a beautiful estate. It's part of the Newport Mansions group of homes. The It's all boxwood, primarily boxwood, shaped into mostly animals. There are other things as well. There's airplanes and this and that, mostly animals. And it's done with incredible precision. This is just a sampling. This photo is just one. It was like, I like cats, so I have a cat in there. But everywhere you look, it goes on and on and on. It's beautiful. And there's a couple of great places to eat down there. There's the Beehive in Bristol. This is in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. And then if you're ever down that way, Blythewald is also a wonderful place to visit. On the upper to the middle and the right are a couple of pictures I found of interesting things at Bedrock Gardens. It's an amazing place, amazing place. It's got lots of different gardens. The woman that was the founder, Jill Nooney, is an artist, and she does a lot of sculpture from found objects. Natural objects could be pieces of wood, trees, things like that, but also with metal. And she will just make these like fantasy creatures. It's very cool. On the bottom, excuse me, these two photos are from the main Coastal Botanical Garden. It's a bit of a trek up there, but take a few days, go up, stay somewhere, bring the kids. It is the most amazing place. It's just amazing. The kids' garden there is amazing. I couldn't get every bit of it on here, but I had to show you these delphinium because I love delphinium. And the little house inside, you go in and there's all this like kid furniture and the grass on the roof, and on the right are is one of the entrances with the fantastic watering cans with the tools. Just amazing. I can't do this kind of thing and not talk about native plants. It's something dear to my heart and something I've been working on, trying to get more people to understand and pay attention to. Super important for kids to know them. I did know some of mine when I was little, maybe not everything, and I don't know everything now, but I'm pretty well versed on what are our native plants, our local native plants, which is really what I'm talking about. The top is striped pipsissewa, and flowers are really pretty. They're very tiny plants, and they're wonderful. The top right is the New England aster, and I do see those, they are around, less and less, of course, but they should know what they are. And if you can plant some of these things in your own yard to help us, retain the numbers that we need for the, especially for the endangered pollinators, all the better. Down on the left is a low bush blueberry. They're edible. They're great for the birds. They turn a beautiful red color in the fall. And then on the right is the sassafras, which I mentioned earlier. I always knew it as a kid as the mitten tree. It has three different kinds of leaves. It's got the ovate leaf, the pointed ovate leaf. That's got one with three crowns. And then one toward the left bottom, you can see, does resemble a mitten, and it's got a lovely fragrance. A few more native plants. I just think, these are all good ones to start with. Pussy willow, and those are probably pretty much coming out now, I would imagine. Again, less and less of this stuff around. I mean, you used to be able to go around and cut your own pussy willows. Now you hardly see anymore. And down on the bottom left, cardinal flower, striking plant, late season, August, needs a little bit of moisture. super, super good hummingbird plant. Hummingbirds are one of the only things that can pollinate them because the flowers are so deep. Milkweed are both on the right. The bottom is the common milkweed that you see. This is one of the ones that the monarchs absolutely have to have. I mean, they have to have it. Plant it, protect it. Great pollinator plant all around. And on the top is the dried pod. So, way late in the season, like, I don't know, November or something, you get the pod, the seeds of the little brown things on the bottom. That silky stuff, you can make little pillows and put that in. It is the softest, silkiest stuff. And then the pod, if you open it and you get the two things, they look like ears, little elf ears. And I did this thing for Christmas one time for the Herb Society, and I made my own elf ears by gluing them to a very plain headband. And then I sprayed them with silver and glitter glue, and I had elf ears. Fun. So there's, a few native plants to get your kids to recognize. Things to do inside with plants. During the summer, you can do dry pressing flowers. I used to use old phone books, but who's got phone books anymore, right? But you can use old big books, or you can buy a kit with a flower press. But between books stacked on each other in newspaper or wax paper works just fine. And you can make art with them. You can make cards. You can make bookmarks, frameable art, all kinds of things. And you can try different things. Just about everything works. And then succulents, they're all the rage. They're super easy to grow. Some of them are little. You can make little collections. All they really need is scant watering, that's for sure. At Kennedy's, when I used to work at Kennedy's, they used to do the succulents once a week. And they were in big hot greenhouses, probably less than your house, but they have to have good light or they won't do well. They won't thrive. So that's but there's so many different funky varieties now. It's fun. Here's that website. And I think if you just put Kids Garden Project, the spruce, you would be able to find it. So. And here we are at the end. And so we say happy spring and may the gardening now begin. And I thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
We've got one comment in the chat that leads to a question that I have because I had the same issue. It says, I'm trying to start sunflowers from seed indoors this year. In past years, I've planted seeds directly in the garden and something eats the seeds. And I've had that problem as well. How do you get around things eating the sunflower seeds?
Excuse me. You can use deterrent sprays is all I can think to do. They're probably going to eat the plant too, I mean, I've had bunny problems. That's my biggest problem here. So I used what's it called? Repelzol or one of those plant skid, which smells terrible, but that's one of the reasons they don't come to it. That's all I can think of. You may want to try starting them in pots, maybe if that would work, if it's not the plant, but just the seed they're eating. I don't know. So that's all I can think of. Not much help. I'm sorry.
Somebody else just said chipmunks love the seeds too.
Well, I'll tell you, I had one year before last, I plant a lot of spring, bulbs for spring here. And out under my 3 heritage birch, I did some species tulips one year called apricot gem. They're gorgeous. And species tulips, as a rule, are more perennial than most of the other tulips. And so I really wanted those out there. And I noticed that some of them were down, and I thought, oh, looks like the rabbits are getting them. Next day I went out and every single one of them was down. I mean, there were like 5 clumps of like 5. And I was devastated. I went and looked closely and I realized they weren't cut because it was a rabbit or something that would have eaten the tulips, right? Duh. It was something had dug the bulbs out and eaten the bulbs. So I think chipmunks are squirrels.
Yeah, we just had another
Oh.
comment in the chat that said, start them in pots and then let them grow up to 6 inches, then move into the garden with old broken or bottomless pots around them. And then someone else said, I grew 2 full flats of sunflower seeds in starter containers. They don't like to be handled too much, so wait until the roots are pretty full in each cell so they hold the soil, then transplant.
There are now these starter things that are very deep. They're good for things like sweet peas, for a lot of things that deep roots, and the taller a plant, the deeper the root's going to probably be. So something like that can help you too. They even have ones that open up, so you're not disturbing the roots at all. But that's a good comment, like broken clay pots or something.
Mhm.
I so what is it that eats them? You think it's chipmunks or?
Probably chipmunks, squirrels,
Yeah.
assorted critters.
I have found, and there's nothing toxic about these animal repellents. It's just urine-y stuff, right? But in peppermint and garlic, it's those kinds of things. They're not like herbicides or anything like that. Or so you can use things like that. I've found those pretty good. They seem to work for me as long as I remember to do it. So
Okay. All right. Well, Susan, thank you for your presentation. Everybody
sure,
really
thank you.
enjoyed it. And I want to thank
Okay.
everybody for coming. And I
Thank you
also
very
wanted
much.
to remind everybody that we have another presentation at noon tomorrow that is Plantin Natives for Wildlife with Leigh Good, and she's the founder of Wild Cohasset. And then we have another 7 p.m. Show tomorrow night, and it's the importance of insects and gardening for native bees with Blake Denius. So I hope we'll see you all then.
Great. Thank you all so
everybody.
much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.